How we doing, friends? And welcome to Flames Nation Live on this Thursday. It's a summer edition of Flames Nation Live. It's Pat Steinberg along with you, coming at you from our Sportsnet 960 downtown studios. Have Josh first in with us, and you can tell, and Gaudreau in as well. You can tell it's the off season. Just the those playoff Flames Nation lives. It was like, bam, people were on the live part of it, like they were instantly in. It's the off season. It's a little slower. It's a little more sleepy when it's all said and done. I understand that. Good to have you on board. Got Dustin on board with us as well. So we got Josh, Gaudreau, Dustin, and more. Get your comments in, get your questions in as per usual. And as per usual, Flames Nation Live is brought to you by our friends at DoorDash, where in season, out of season, doesn't matter. You can always use that promo code. Go download the app, create an account, and then use the promo code FNLiveDD. You do all those things, and you're getting 25% off and free delivery on your first order. Once again, download the app, create the account, and use the promo code FNLiveDD. Flames Nation Live always brought to you by DoorDash. So the big topic today is going to be Johnny Gaudreau. Jeff and Zach in as well. Dustin says he's worried about this offseason. And, you know, I think that the biggest area that Flames fans are worried about right now is whether or not Johnny Gaudreau ends up signing an extension with the Calgary Flames and signing a new contract with the Calgary Flames. Let's get a little insight on this from our colleague, Frank Saravelli. So as you get your thoughts in on the live chat, this is Frank Saravelli from earlier this week. He joins Flames Talk on Wednesdays and Boomer in the Morning on Tuesdays to talk all things NHL. And one of the things that he spoke about on both these programs, this is from Boomer in the Morning on Tuesday. Here is where Frank is when it comes to what's happening on the Johnny Gaudreau front.
Gaudreau deal does get done. How far in advance do you think? Because if a deal's going to get done, it doesn't need to go right. I don't know that the 13th, that doesn't really have any, it's not a pinch point, is it? In terms of a regular negotiation, would this not be a little bit different?
I would think the pinch point is a lot sooner than that. Yeah. My understanding with the Flames is they are, quote, pedal down. That's what Brad's reliving. That's the type of mode that he's in at the moment, trying to get this deal done with Johnny Gaudreau. It starts with him, and then it trickles down to the other guys that are pending free agents that need deals. And when you look at Brad's reliving's track record throughout his tenure, he doesn't mess around, and B, he's got his finger on the pulse of so many other things happening around the league that he's in a spot where if he gets the sense that this isn't going to materialize, I wouldn't be shocked to see him begin to knock out some other things on his list. Maybe there's a last-second opportunity, but my guess is if it gets to July 10th, 11th, 12th, and Johnny Gaudreau is not signed, he's probably not coming back. I think they're going to have that indication way before then. Never say never. I mean, there have been guys, Steven Stamkos, others that have gone to market and ended up coming back because the grass isn't always greener.
Okay, so that's Frank Saravelli on Boomer in the Morning on Tuesday morning. Available wherever you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, Google, Amazon. And I think that all the intel that I have on Johnny Gaudreau and the situation as it stands right now suggests that, yes, they are full court press, full throttle when it comes to trying to bang this thing out. I do believe that the number one priority for the Flames and the number one option for the Flames, they want to re-sign Johnny Gaudreau. And here's what we know. We know they're going to offer him an 8-year deal. And we know that, that 8-year deal is going to give them a leg up on other teams when it comes to the AAV, because they're the only team that can offer the eighth year. Every other team's only going to be able to get to 7 when free agency opens in less than 5 weeks' time. So we know they're going to offer 8. We know that Johnny is going to be looking for 8 or a max deal, 7 if he gets to unrestricted free agency. The two things that intrigue me most about this contract, not the term, because we know how long it's going to be, 8 or 7. It is that AAV. That's the obvious one. I think it starts with a 10 if he re-signs in Calgary. And I'll throw 8 times 10. I think that's kind of the ballpark. If they can get it under double digits per year, I think that's a win. But I don't think it's an L if they don't. Like if he signs at 10.25 or 10.3 or something like that, that's not a loss at all. It is a W if you're keeping this guy. So yes, AAV is the number one most interesting part. But I'm also really interested to see how much signing bonus plays into this. If you get signing bonus, it affects things differently from the player's standpoint. It doesn't affect the AAV. The AAV on the cap remains the same, but it affects things in terms of escrow, when you get your money, lockout proofing, all that type of stuff. There is reason why big name players like signing bonuses and like having a lot of the money tied up in signing bonuses. Like go take a look at Austin Matthews' deal, his latest deal that he signed with the Toronto Maple Leafs. It is chock full of signing bonus. And not every team is amenable to doing that and giving lots of money in the signing bonus category. And the Flames are a team that historically have not done that. Well, that might be something that they can do. And as Pike mentioned when he joined us on Flames Talk earlier this week on Sportsnet 960, like maybe you go to Johnny Gaudreau and say, hey, we've never really done the signing bonus thing before. For you, we're willing to give you X percentage of your contract in signing bonus money. So I'm really interested to see how that plays itself out. And I'm really curious if that is one of the things that maybe pushes it over the top when it comes to Johnny Gaudreau. To your comments in just a second and your thoughts on the live chat in just a second, we wanted to just add a little bit more on the Johnny Gaudreau front. This is from Thursday's Daily Face-Off show, which streams every weekday at 10 a.m. Calgary time, noon Eastern. This was Frank Saravelli and Daily Face-Off contributor Mike McKenna talking again about Johnny Gaudreau and his future with the Calgary Flames and what that deal might end up looking like when it gets signed.
You look at this situation with Johnny Gaudreau, I'm told the Calgary Flames have put the pedal down in terms of being aggressive, trying to get a new deal done with Johnny Gaudreau. My guess is it's going to take a really significant number, like think 8 years times 10 million in order to get Johnny Gaudreau, who's this close, to say, you know what, I will forego going to market. Do you feel the same way?
I 100% do. I mean, Johnny Gaudreau should be a $10 million player in the NHL, or really more than that, Frank. When you start to look at comparables around the league and you see that, Panarin's up in the 11s and Tavares is up there as well. Gaudreau's your premier winger available for this year's UFA crop. And coming off that huge season, he should get paid. The only hesitancy I can see is that it was something of a bounce back year for Gaudreau. He had a down season previously, but things were all weird during COVID, man. I think you're seeing the true version of him. If you're the GM of the Flames, if you're Brad Treliving, there's kind of a cascade effect here to signing Gaudreau, if you ask me. Like, you need to lock up your best player to be able to get Tkachuk and the other guys in your roster to come back and try to do the same thing. So for me, I think the Calgary Flames have to do everything they can to keep him. I do wonder, though, there's teams out there with cap space, Frank, and there's teams that would obviously love to have Gaudreau, teams that would move money. Usual suspects, you look Flyers, you look at the Devils. You'd have more insight, I think, with those clubs than I would. Do you see other teams around this league really having the interest and the cap space to make a strong play on Gaudreau?
Yeah, I do. I just think there aren't many players like that eventually become available, right? And to get that type of production and plug it into your lineup, I think he can help transform your team.
Frank Saravelli and Mike McKenna of Daily Faceoff. Sorry for the screen going blank there. Not sure why that happened. But that's Frank Saravelli and Daily Faceoff from Daily Faceoff. Mike McKenna from Daily Faceoff on the Daily Faceoff show Thursday with a little bit more on Johnny Gaudreau. And I agree with Frank. Like, I think we're talking about, if he signs with the Flames, it's probably starting with a 10 on an 8-year deal. And that to me is fair, knowing what Johnny is, knowing what he has brought to this team, knowing where the market is, knowing where the cap has gone since Johnny signed his last deal. That'd be a $3.25 million add to Calgary's salary cap. He's currently at 6.75, so you'd be adding on just over $3 million to the cap. That's how I always like to look at things. It's less about, you're adding $80 million to the cap or $10 million. Well, no, you're adding 3.25 to the cap based on what Johnny has been on this team. And That 6-year deal that he just completed. At what time wasn't that good value? Even in the down years for Johnny, 6.75 was still a really good contract. There is never a single moment where that wasn't a good value contract for the Calgary Flames, in my opinion. He is due a raise. He is deserving of a raise. I hope it's a raise that he gets with the Flames because that's what's best, I fully believe, for the organization, but he deserves it. And I think it's going to start with a 10. I do think there will be plenty of teams. You know, we mentioned, you heard Frank and Mike talk about Philly and New Jersey as potential landing spots. Do not write off Boston. Do not write off the Islanders. If Boston finds out that Patrice Bergeron is retiring, I can absolutely see the Bruins being big on Johnny. And let's not forget that there's that connection with him going to college for 3 years at Boston College. The Islanders are a team that is in the mix. And just go take a look at Twitter. Anytime there's anything mentioned about Johnny Gaudreau, Isles fans are salivating at the notion. So I do think there will be suitors for him. I still think he's going to re-sign in Calgary. I think when that happens, it's something in the 8-by-10 range. And if they can get it underneath that, it's probably a W for them. Let's see how it all plays out. To the live chat we go. Dustin kicked us off on the live chat when he said that he's worried about the offseason. He says, it's the whole team that scares me. I know they're going to look different going into next year. I would look to move Lucic and Monahan, which I do think are two of the guys that will be in the mix to be moved, especially if they sign both Tkachuk and Gaudreau to the long-term extensions like so many Flames fans want. So they are going to have to make sacrifices from this past year's team if they're going to keep their most important players. Lucic is one of those guys that could be a sacrifice. Monahan, same category. Goodbranson, Zadorov. Those are the 4 luxuries the Flames had last season that I don't know if they're going to be able to have this coming season if they're going to keep all their guys. Mike wondering about Jesse Puljujarvi. Says a lot of talk about Jesse Puljujarvi as a target for Calgary. How well do you think he'd fit on the roster? I think it'd be a great fit. You know, going back to the 2016 draft, I thought I was biggest on Puljujarvi for the Flames. He was the guy that I was like, yes, that would be the best fit for the Flames. Now they ended up getting a pretty good player, better player, I think, as we've seen. They got the right guy in Matthew Tkachuk. I just didn't think Tkachuk was going to fall there, and we thought that maybe the Flames could end up getting their way into the top 3. Puljujarvi ended up falling to 4, which pushed Levy to Vancouver, as we know, and that allowed Calgary to pounce and get a steal in Matthew Tkachuk as the number 6 overall pick. So, yeah, I think that Puljujarvi would be a great fit. I think he gets way too much flack in Edmonton. He is a very effective hockey player. I think he's a cost-effective hockey player. Yeah, if the Flames were to be interested in Puljujarvi, I'd be all for that. I think it'd be a great fit with Calgary. Dustin disagrees, though. Says he thinks they have better that they could bring up. I think Puljujarvi, you go take a look at the underlying metrics on Jesse Puljujarvi, very strong. Now, in saying that, I have no idea if the Flames are interested in him. I don't think the Oilers should trade him, but sounds like they might do that. Taylor says that Johnny is definitely a $10 million player. What else we got here? From Seth, if Johnny walks, why did they let it get that far without trading him or getting something? Well, here's why. Because they were in a spot to compete for a Stanley Cup going into the postseason. It's tough because first of all, I still think he's going to re-sign, in which case it's a moot point. But I don't think it's an off chance, but on the chance that it goes the other way and he doesn't re-sign in Calgary, I'm okay with that. Like the year that they were having with the coach that they had, the line that he was playing on, the path to the Western Conference Final or beyond the Flames had this year, I am not going to criticize them for not trading Johnny Gaudreau at the deadline. I'm not. Or going back to the offseason. I just think that it was a spot that, yeah, they sometimes you take that risk. And I think it is a bad thing for the Flames if they let him go, but or if he doesn't re-sign. Like I obviously think it's a bad thing. And I think that maybe there could be some criticism that is warranted for not being able to sign him last off season. But I don't think at any point, knowing the way things were, that they should have traded him at the deadline. So I think criticism about not being able to get a contract done earlier, that is fair. I never thought that trading him was the way to go either, if that makes any sense. Lou says Forsberg, if Johnny ends up walking, it'd be another Swede. There's definitely a lot of Swedes. And I say that in jest because, Lou, I agree. I think he'd be a nice fit. And I think he'd be a really nice fit on a line with Lindholm if they were to go down that road. It's interesting because if that ends up happening, and he ends up walking, Johnny ends up walking, and they're going to have cap space because I think Matthew Tkachuk is a guy that all of a sudden you don't look at as much of a long-term fit on this team either. So that's going to be really interesting to watch. Jordan says Puljujarvi, good player, caught in a historically bad development program. I think that's fair. Jesse, if Johnny walks, does Chucky stay? Is losing both Johnny and Gio and selling off all the draft capital that could have been used to offset those losses smart asset management? In other words, and in that context, does losing Johnny cost Treliving his job? I don't think that is going to cost Tree his job. I don't, at least not in the immediacy. I would be stunned if Brad Treliving's not the general manager through all of next year, which brings him to the end of his contract. A reevaluation then, sure, absolutely. I think that could be in the cards. If Johnny leaves, I think that there is less of a chance that Tkachuk stays. And then I think to the point earlier about not trading Johnny from Seth, then I think you get into a situation where you absolutely have to trade away a guy like Tkachuk, whether it's this offseason, whether it's in season, whatever. You sign him to his 1-year deal and then you move him, especially if he's not, if that's in the situation that Matthew's also not interested in signing long-term if Johnny walks. Again, I was all for them going out and making this year an all-in year, so I'm not going to criticize them for doing that. It didn't ultimately work out with a deep, deep run, but I'm not going to criticize them going all in because I was very much an advocate for them doing that, so that'd be talking out of both ends of my mouth, and I try not to do that as much as I can. James says, if Johnny leaves, do they rebuild? I think they should, personally. I think the half-in teams they've had in the past are not good enough, and they should blow this whole thing up if he leaves. It is definitely an interesting case made, and I think you could make an argument for that. Jordan says, I'm okay if Johnny doesn't sign, and they should start a rebuild in that case. If he doesn't sign, finding someone to fill his shoes will be impossible. You'll have to pay more for less. I agree. You know what? And there's a compelling case to maybe go in a drastically different direction if Johnny Gaudreau doesn't re-sign. Travis says, could you see a Pastrnak for Johnny trade as any kind of possibility? No, because Pastrnak is in a different situation than Johnny. He's got 1 year left on his deal. I'm just going to go make sure I confirm that because I believe that's the case. Bergeron is the guy that is looking at potentially retiring, and the guy that we'll see whether or not the Bruins end up bringing back. But no, I don't think so. So Pastrnak has 1 year left on his deal. I just want to make sure I was right on that fact. No, I don't think there's a whole lot of trade capital for Johnny. I really don't. He's an unrestricted free agent. So I don't think that's a possibility. Could a Pastrnak trade be a possibility? Sure, but I don't think it involves Johnny Gaudreau because Johnny has next to no trade value as a pending unrestricted free agent. Even the 4+ weeks or just under 5 weeks that a team would have for exclusive negotiating, I don't think there's a lot of trade value there. And finally, Sam says, what about Zach Kassian? Should the Flames acquire him? Sounds like he's a buyout candidate in Edmonton. Despite that, no, by no means do I think the Flames should acquire Zach Kassian. I don't think there's much left there. I don't think that there's a ton of effectiveness left there in Kassian. So, no, personally, I don't think that's a great idea. Great stuff on the live chat, everybody. Great questions, great comments. Always good to interact with you. The off-season edition of Flames Talk is now underway. We are with you all off-season long. We're brought to you by DoorDash, as always. Promo code FNLiveDD. Download the app, create the account, and go use that promo code for 25% off and free delivery on your first order. We'll be back sometime next week. with another edition of Flames Nation Live. One last question. Taylor says, when do you think we'll find out if Johnny resigns or leaves? I think we'll find out if he signs in the next few weeks. I don't think it would go all the way to the deadline. The closer we get to July 13th and the opening of free agency, the more I'll be convinced that he's walking. I think if he does end up resigning, we find out that news in the next few weeks or so. Thanks for the questions. Thanks for the comments on the live chat. Be kind. Stay safe. Be friendly to one another. We'll talk to you on the next edition of Flames Nation Live. I'm Pat at the Sportsnet 960 Downtown Studios, and we've been brought to you, as always, by DoorDash. Have a great weekend, everybody.